Welcome to another edition of the RealAg Book Club. I'm your host, Bern Tobin. Today, we're going to explore the challenge of finding balance in our daily lives. Is balance truly achievable? If so, how do you go about it? Well, we're going to discuss those questions and more with our guest, Dan Thurmon, who's the author of Off Balance on Purpose. We're also going to talk to Dan a little bit about Tech Tour Live. He's going to be one of our featured speakers when Tech Tour Live touches down in Brandon on March 13th, Saskatoon March 14th, Red Deer March 15th, and Lethbridge on March 16th. He'll be bringing his books. He's going to do some juggling, ride his unicycles, and even throw some knives. So what are we in for? Let's find out. So here's the author of Off Balance on Purpose, Dan Thurmon. Hey, Dan, welcome to the RealAg Book Club.
Great to be here. Thanks, Bernard.
Hey, Dan, most of us struggle to find balance in our lives. So much to do, so little time, and some of us do better than others. But you say in your book that we really never can achieve balance. It can't, and it can't happen, and it's something you really don't want. Can you explain that?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I know that sounds counterintuitive to many of your listeners because we've been told that that balance is the ultimate goal, right? If we can work hard enough or smart enough that we eventually get to this future moment where things will make a lot more sense and simplify. But the reality is that life is not a hypothetical future. Life is what I say an undeniable present. It's happening now, and the present moment is all you ever get. It's your only opportunity to learn, to grow, to contribute, and to accomplish your objectives, or at least to move them forward. And so balance, here's the key. Balance is not what you get. You never attain balance. Balance is what you do. And we need to become better at mastering those moments and making the right choices that are congruent with our goals, our passion, our mission, ourselves, and so that we can embrace the reality that we have, and then we can go off balance intentionally, right, which is what off balance on purpose means. It's your choice, and you're taking ownership for that, but also you're bringing a sense of purpose and mission to what you do, because it is hard, and we need that.
So talk a little bit more about Off Balance on Purpose, Dan. You alluded to it. What is it? What is the philosophy, and why should we embrace it?
Yes, it is a philosophy. It's a different way to understand the reality of what you're facing. And I wrote this book because I was frustrated. I was frustrated speaking, really across the country and around the world to various organizations across all industries, and people were just perplexed. And they were saying, balance is something that's so important to our organization or to us personally. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. And it was just, again, this kind of hypothetical aspiration that they just held out there in the future. And I said, well, wait a second. Let's examine this. Let's really drill down deep and see, is this really what we're trying to attain? And if so, how can you do it? Is it possible? And so, again, those 4 words, off balance on purpose, really break it down to the reality is that life's off balance, and that's a good thing because you have to be off balance in order to grow, to learn, to serve, to be present, to be a great father or farmer or business owner or whatever it may be, in any area of your life, a spouse, a sibling, we're off balance in service to the world that we create. And taking that intentional stance, in other words, being purposeful, intentional, is critical. And then, of course, on purpose means also that you elevate your life from just a pursuit of the next task in front of you to really the understanding that you have an opportunity to create a legacy and to live the values that you believe. And if you do that, then you see everything through a different lens.
Now, Dan, in your book, and just building on that, you talk about, balance sometimes is defined as comfort and, and that even keel, but you kind of defined it as, comfort and complacency, and nothing really great, no greatness really never rises from that.
Well, if you look at a balance from the metaphor, for example, a scale, that we're going to perfectly apportion our time or our energy or our money in these ways, then yes, what you're trying to do is to affect a momentary equilibrium, which is, again, that stops change. That really prevents you from forward progress, instead of saying, in this moment, I'm off balance because here's my goal, here's my objective, this is what's in front of me. I'm going to be present with this person in front of me, or for the needs that I have relative to my family or my life or my business, and we're going to go for it, and then initiating the right changes, leaning in, going off balance on purpose, which is a physical posture, when I present the stunts and these concepts in my speech, is very physical, very visual and exciting, but it's also kind of this intellectual posture that we have to understand. It's never a safe play. And if we just try to limit ourselves to what's comfortable, we're really denying ourselves what's possible. Mm-hmm. So we need to understand the things that are making us uncomfortable, but for the right reasons, and then have the courage to step boldly into those circumstances.
Timmy, the whole idea of balance conjures up, of off balance conjures up people, images of people who are out of control, people who rush from one fire to the next. But you say that's not the case if you make decisions that respect, I guess, in your term is your spheres of influence. If you respect your work, relationships, your health, spiritual growth, personal interests. Tell us about that.
Well, I'd make a distinction, first of all, from being off balance, which is what I'm advocating. I've described that, to being out of balance, out of alignment, just kind of like haphazardly, like you said, moving from one emergency scenario to the next. And we get very easily confuse that sense of busyness, responsiveness, activity with a sense of purpose, because it feels like we're doing something. But when you examine it closer, you say, well, is this really what's important to me? Have I done the most important things? Have I forwarded my mission or my personal story or my contributions or grown my business? Have I accomplished what I set out to do? And so you mentioned the 5 spheres. And in my book, I break it down to your work, your relationships, your health, your spirit, your spiritual growth, and your personal interests, the things you just love to do because they're you. They're your hobbies, your areas of activity or education or interest. And most balance books will tell you, again, you got to compartmentalize your life, protect your time in each area, and trying to even it out in such a way where they don't compete with each other, which is absolutely ridiculous because we just don't have infinite time to do that. We have limited choices. So the only way, I believe, to really accomplishing a meaningful, successful, fulfilling, happy life, which is ultimately the goal for everyone. I don't care who you are or what you do. We want a sense of purpose. We want a sense of fulfillment and happiness and contribution and meaning. The only way to get there is to find ways to view those 5 spheres, again, your work, your relationships, your health, your spirit, and your personal interests, as no longer competing. They can't be mutually exclusive. They can be mutually supportive. I advocate trying to look for the patterns of how they support each other and then making decisions that not only impact one area or 2 areas or put them at odds with each other, but you say, how can I elevate everything that I'm about by making better choices, what I call supercharged choices, and by connecting the spheres to one another and finding ways to really enhance the infinite capacity that is your life. We all have the capability of designing our life. And it's very easy to say, oh, I'm just a victim of my circumstances, or I'm dealing with what's in front of me at this moment. And that's a cop-out. We really have the opportunity to make choices. We all do. And so when we take that, again, that ownership, which, is really important, and then we say, well, what do we really want to achieve, and how do we accomplish that? We can get creative, and we begin to see opportunities for designing a life that's not only more fulfilling, but it's really exciting, and because and you can feel and experience on a day-to-day basis that you're really making a difference for yourself and for others.
Now, when I think about people who are off balance, farmers are some of the first people to come to mind. They're planting and harvest seasons, where you work long hours for tremendous stretches, and that's just one example. How does your philosophy work in the context of busy people like farmers?
Sure. So there are obviously those off-balance moments when farmers are really invested because of the demands, as you said, in the seasons, or the demands of the moment, or competition, or whatever it can be. The next technological shift that's in front of them that takes, again, an amazing amount of time. And let's face it, most of our hours are dedicated to our professional life. It's just the way it is. And so what I would say is, how do we, again, support that ambition and endeavor by connecting it to the other areas of our life? So we got our work, our profession of farming, and we have the relationships, the people in our life. I know many are family-connected businesses where you work with people you care about and love, or you develop relationships with people who are on your teams, and you say, well, how do we invest in them personally so that we feel a true camaraderie and that we are in this together. When I'm, for example, on the road and I'm traveling, speaking, and I'll be spending a week in Canada on tech tour, I have, a beautiful wife, married 23 years, 2 great kids, and so I'm gone. But I've developed that lifeline. I guarantee you they'll understand why I'm gone, who I'm working with, what I'm doing. They've been on stage with me countless times and on trips with me, and they understand the purpose behind what I do. And so when you can strengthen those relationships by saying, here's why I do it, this is what this means to us, and maybe even inviting some contributions or creativity, that's a great way to connect what I call a lifeline, in this case from work to relationships. Then, of course, there's health. How do you withstand those long hours, those stretches of time where you have to continue to commit and perform at the highest levels? Well, if you're not attentive about your health, if you view your job and your work as competing against each other, it'll wear you out. Eventually, you will lose, and it's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. But if we take this commitment to health and understand health, but getting rest and nutrition and exercise and all the things we know we should be doing, it's not just a sometimes activity. This is because we're in it for the long haul, to be there for our professional commitments, for our relationships. And then, of course, bringing your spiritual principles and beliefs and the interests, the things that are unique about you into your job, then suddenly this off-balance endeavor is not disconnected from everything. It's still connected, even though it's it's a lot of energy and time that at that moment is off balance. Mm-hmm. in that direction.
I want to talk a little bit more about tech tour in a second, but final question, going back to farming, and farming can be very stressful. Stress creeps into farm life all over the place, and farm safety, for example, is a concern. It's a dangerous workplace, and I guess the question is, how do you self-identify when you are too far off balance? Can you be too far off balance?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, there are certainly times when you put yourself in the danger zone. I actually do other presentations, and I'll use some of this content and information on Tech Tour, which is really about safety. Having a background as I have, working with tremendous professionals in stunts and circus and live performances and just events that would blow your mind because of the creativity, the physical dexterity of the performers. What you come to learn is that people who are engaged in what others would say these are high-risk pursuits, you think of them as just crazy daredevils, but in fact, they are the most dedicated safety professionals I've ever encountered. And the reason is they have to be, again, because it's not about a one-time stunt. It's not about, just courage and just throwing yourself out there and hoping for the best. They are after sustainable careers for their families, for the people they care about, for the people they work with. And so a couple things is, it's not about being fearless. It's about being flawless. Mm-hmm. It's about execution and improving your systems and your abilities to the point where you're focused on doing the right thing consistently as a matter of flow and routine and habit. And there's no exceptions, right? As a professional, I've worked with a lot of jugglers. I myself can juggle quite a bit of different objects, and I use that in my presentation to talk about focus. And so, the evidence of a mistake is obviously when you drop something. When you make a mistake, you drop. And the point I make is, listen, every juggler, I don't care how good you are, you get to a point in your practice or your routine, if you keep going, you will make a mistake. You're going to drop. And the whole key is to develop that intuition that you can stop before you drop, that you can understand and anticipate the factors that are going to cause a mistake, and then you can diffuse them, and you can address them ahead of time and develop that awareness to say, I need to take a step back, I need to invite another conversation, whatever. And so those factors that I'll talk about are just the acronym for the word drop. Distractions, getting distracted from what you were doing because of all the other factors. You kind of expand your focus away and you take your eye off the ball in terms of safety. Rushing your pace when you're focused only on speed or just the hurried moment of trying to get to that next accomplishment, when often we are much more efficient. We're better at actually meeting our deadlines when we can develop the awareness to slow things down. The O is for overload, when you can overload your systems, your processes, your equipment, right? Yourself in terms of your capacity. That's where you're going to make a mistake. And then the fourth one, the P, is for panic. When we put ourselves into that stressed out emotional state, because of the factors in front of us or because we feel the pressure, then we're not making smart decisions. We are not engaging in the best version of who we are, and we don't have all the resources in our mental capacity to address those situations. So again, distractions, rushing your pace, overload, and panic. Mm-hmm. In any of those situations, it's imperative to step back and to get back into your systems and understand we need to stop. We need to get it right the first time.
Right. Hey, I want to ask you a little bit about you. Fascinating story here, fascinating journey. I mean, as a young man, you mentioned it, you learned to juggle, ride a unicycle, you throw knives. Tell us about that and sort of paint a picture of what farmers are going to see and experience in March during Tech Tour.
Yes. Well, I was very fortunate in my life to have encouraging parents, creative parents who kind of always told me, Dan, it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is how you do it. And so at 11 years old, at a Renaissance festival, when I learned to juggle, I really found a channel for my energy and an outlet to perform and to begin to grow a business. So I started working. I mean, at these young ages, I developed a one-man show, and I did all these fairs and festivals and corporate events, and how I paid for college. And I built a performance production company that was my first, real business before I got into personal development and self-help. Because what I understood is that the lessons that make you great at anything are transferable to enable success in any endeavor if we can really back up enough to see what made it happen. And so I use in my live work those skills, those physical capacities to engage the audience, to entertain them, to keep their attention for sure. But more than that, to visually illustrate the principles that I'm talking about, which is how do you manage your focus in the midst of this chaos and activity? How do you understand the patterns that are at work in enabling you to be more successful and to continue to grow? How do you work with others and get into these scenarios where we can collaborate and bring out each other's best efforts? And so what you're going to see is it's going to be fun. It'll be very experiential. And what I like to say is, I bring everything I've got. I bring all my talents, my skills, my stories, my lessons, because we got one chance together in that live event to really have a conversation and make an impact that I believe will really help advance not only your agricultural career, but your ideas for life. And that's the big thing for me, is because it'll change everything in terms of the way you relate to the people in your life, and ultimately how you view the version of success that is right for you.
Right. Well, hey, Dan, hey, thanks for taking the time to join us on the Real Ag Book Club. We really appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, and I hope to see you on the road.
Yes, sir. Hey, the book is called Off Balance on Purpose. I would encourage everyone to grab a copy. It's a great read, and don't forget, as we've just discussed, you can see Dan in person at Tech Tour Live in March. So look that up online. Hey, Dan, thanks again, and we'll talk to you all next time on the Real Ag Book Club.